Hi mamas, Emily here. Welcome back to my channel, or a warm welcome if you are here for the first time. Today I am going to be taking you through some summer leading into fall meal prep ideas for my toddler son. I like to cook a lot of his food from scratch using healthy and wholesome ingredients. All of the recipes I'm sharing today are allergy-friendly. They are dairy-free, soy-free, gluten-free, and refined sugar-free. Without further ado, let's get cooking. The first recipe we are making today is a paleo bread. The ingredients you will need are almond butter, baking soda, sea salt, honey, apple cider vinegar, flax meal, a cat, coconut flour, and eggs. One hack I have for you if you hate dirtying measuring spoons is using a food scale. Place the jar or container on the scale, press the tare button to zero it out, then use the number of grams or ounces to measure how much you need. In this next clip, you will see that I needed 180 grams of almond butter, and the scale will read -186, which is perfect. So while I'm mixing the bread batter, I'm actually going to be making two breads from this one recipe, one of just the regular paleo bread, and then one I'm making a strawberry banana bread. So I am going to be mixing together half a banana, 3 strawberries, and then a 1/4 cup of applesauce. Blend that up until it's all pureed together, and then in the next clip I'm going to show you how I split the batter to make the two breads. As you saw in the previous clip, we're going to preheat the oven to 350, and then to make the two breads, all you're going to do is pour half a cup of the strawberry banana puree, and then add that to half of the paleo bread batter, and then just mix both of them up. And when you're ready to pour the batter, pour them into bread loaf pans lined with parchment paper. In the recipe, it says to bake for 30 minutes, but since I made half recipe in each pan, I started to set the timer at 20 minutes and then increase time if needed. I then placed an organic frozen turkey burger in the slow cooker with some water. I placed it on low to cook for several hours. I find that slow cooking them over grilling makes them more tender. The next recipe we are going to make is a gluten-free meatloaf. You will need ground beef, flax meal, diced onion, garlic, eggs, sea salt, pepper, Italian seasoning, and ketchup. Looking at the recipe, you will see I omitted a few ingredients, but I'm sure it's just as delicious with them added in. This recipe calls for half an onion, which is pretty hard to gauge as onions vary in size so much. So I decided to add the onion in as the last ingredient and just kind of eyeball it. And then I just mixed that all up with my hands. I wore some food gloves to keep my hands germ-free. And then I went to check on my breads. One of them I did need to put back in the oven as it was not completely done yet. I then greased a bread loaf pan with some coconut oil and just spread the meatloaf mixture into the pan. And then I went to go check on my other bread and it was completely done. Now to clean up a little bit. I like to do the cleanup in stages. My kitchen, as you can see, is not very big, so I like to keep my workstation as clean as possible. I originally set the timer for the meatloaf for 15 minutes. The original recipe calls for 30, but I made a half recipe. Once the 15 minutes were up, I took the meatloaf out to put the ketchup on, then put back in the oven for an additional 15 minutes. We are going to move on to making some egg cups. For this recipe, you will be needing eggs, of course, red pepper, green pepper, basil and oregano, sea salt, diced tomatoes, and pepper. I decided to omit a few ingredients from this recipe and see how they ended up. I did not include the spinach, the egg whites, or of course the feta because of the dairy. As you can see here, I have diced tomatoes, diced red pepper, diced green pepper, and then I decided to also cut up some carrots just to give a little bit more of variety in color and veggie. I then added about a third of the way full to the top of egg mixture, added in veggies on top of that, and then you'll see in a little bit later clip that I just poured in the remainder of the egg mixture on top. By this point, my meatloaf was all done and ready to cool on the stove. All my egg cups were in the oven. I got started on making the last recipe, which is an apple spice baked oatmeal. This recipe called for almond milk, so I decided to make my own. It's very simple by just blending up water and almond butter. For this recipe, you will need applesauce, almond milk, diced apples, raisins, I chopped mine up, flax meal, honey, cinnamon and nutmeg, and oats.
Are you ready for it?
The original recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, but I just used honey instead. I eyeballed the measurement and then just tasted it to make sure that it was sweet enough to my liking. The original recipe called for making these in muffin tins, but I decided to just bake this in a Corningware instead. I also did just make a half recipe instead of a whole recipe.
Are you ready for it? Are you ready for it? Are you ready for it?
A couple hours later, I prepped some veggies that will last a couple days. Some broccoli, peas, and green beans. This is the finished product of the egg cups. I'm really happy with the way they turned out. With the basil and oregano, they kind of remind me of pizza a little bit. So if you added cheese, I'm sure they would be extra tasty. At this point, my son was awake, so doing meal prep while he was awake was a challenge. Okay, so that is all for me today. Meal prep for my son is done. For the week, I feel really accomplished with everything that I got done. I am going to be including all the original recipes down in the description box. So if you want to make them for yourself or for your littles, then go ahead and check out those links. If you liked any part of this video or found it helpful or entertaining, would you please give it a thumbs up? I would really appreciate it. And if you want to see more videos from me, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the little bell notification so you know every time I post a video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!